hips is where a lot of the mobility comes from, or should come from, not your lower back. So this is why this video is so important. You should be paying attention.
Remember, eyes, hips, passion. Got it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
What are you doing?
Working out my hips. I think they're getting sticky.
What are you talking about? So, Jeremiah, what is going on?
My hips have been feeling sticky.
You mean they're like tight?
Sticky.
They're inflexible?
I'm feeling sticky.
You're stiff.
I'm fitness expert Jeremiah Kruger.
And I'm Dr. Ben Quist, and we're here today to help you with your
Sticky
hips.
So why do people's hips even get sticky? Peanut butter?
There are two reasons people's hips get sticky. Number one is some people just have tight hips genetically. Number two,
Peanut butter, right?
no. Number two is something much more devious. Something that we all do, which we probably shouldn't do too much. It's sitting! Tight hips, sticky hips are the second most common postural deviation I see on people, and the second only to hunchy posture.
Ooh, callback.
And I have determined that hunchy actually is a word.
Yeah. So can you dive a little deeper in what actually causes sticky hips?
Sure. Really, it's mainly two muscle groups. The hamstrings in the back of the hip, and then the hip flexors in the front. And those two kind of have an interplay where if they are not well balanced and they're not at the appropriate length, it can cause a lot of pressure into the hip joint and then also into your lower back and cause some of those awful injuries that Mike is always getting.
And bang, he falls out of position.
Which, believe me, everybody, you do not want one of those injuries. All right, so what happens when you're sitting is all of these muscles in the front of your hip start to get bunched up. And when muscles are put in a position for a long period of time, they adaptively shorten, causing them to become tight. I always like to say, if you're sitting for like 10 hours a day, your butt is your death button. And you do not want to be pressing your death button. All right, so we already talked about the fact that we have tight muscles on the back side, the hamstrings, and tight muscles on the front, potentially, which are the hip flexors. And I think there's this misconception out there that everybody should have this super mobile lower back and they're working on stretching that and everything. But in reality, it is better from an injury prevention standpoint to have a stable, strong lower back and to have very mobile hips, okay? Because hips is where a lot of the mobility comes from, or should come from, not your lower back. So this is why this video is so important. You should be paying attention. If you have tight muscles on the anterior part or front of your hip, what you're gonna do is those muscles are gonna pull you into an anterior tilt, causing bad posture at that lumbar spine and possibly causing injury. If the muscles are tight in the back of the hip, it's the exact opposite. It's going to pull you into a posterior tilt or out of position. And those tight muscles basically cause you to have to take some mobility or use mobility at your lower back for things that you shouldn't, and that's where those injuries occur. Now we're going to show you how to test to find out whether you have tight muscles on the front or back of your hips. Okay, so the first quick check you can do to see if you're sticky in the front of your hips is this one here. It's best to do this on a mat table if you have it. If not, you can do this on a flat bench at the gym. Very easy to do, or you can even do it on your bed at home. But you want your legs all the way off to a little bit further than your knees. So Jeremiah, come a little bit, scooch a little bit more this way. Good, okay. Now, take your left leg, and you want to test this on both sides. So pull your left leg into your body so that you flatten your low back into the mat table. This is really important that that back stays on the table the whole time. If your back pulls away from the table, you're not doing the test right. So that's got to stay down there, and you get that to happen by just pulling hard here. And then from there, we're testing this side. We look to see whether you can easily bring your leg to the table. And you can see that Jeremiah can, so he does not have a sticky front hip, okay? What this is going to look like if you have a sticky front hip is you're going to be coming down and suddenly you're not going to be able to go anymore. And it's going to be like boing, boing, boing. It's kind of feels like a rubber band. And I've seen people as much as this. And, many times I'll find people like this, and that's because of all that sitting that we do. So you'd want to test that on both sides. Second test is the hamstring test. This one's really easy to do. Again, you want to keep that lower back kind of flattened into the mat, and you want to test this on both sides. I'm going to have you lift your right leg first, coming up, good. And you want to see how far can you lift that leg with your foot kind of at a 90 degree and your knee perfectly straight. And it's the angle from the table that we're looking for here. And you can see that if we look at this angle, Jeremiah easily gets up to 90 degrees. That is really great. So he does not have a sticky back of his hip. And if someone has a sticky back hip, what you're going to see is that they might be able to come up to like 45 degrees. They might be able to come up to 60 degrees. In my world, to not have a sticky back hip, I want to see you at least 80 degrees or above, being able to raise that leg up.
All right, so how do we unstick our hips?
We're going to show you 4 different moves. 2 moves for the front of the hip if it's sticky, and 2 moves for the back of the hip if it's sticky.
All right, move number 1 for the front of your hip. It's called a couch stretch. You're going to place your foot on top of something that is about hip height when you're on your knee. One thing to focus on is keeping a neutral spine, which is a slight anterior tilt. Oftentimes, if you have tight hip flexors in this stretch position, your chest is kind of puffed forward, our ribs start to expand. The goal is just to bring that backwards slightly and sit as tall as you can. When you're starting this stretch out, you might end up down here, and that's totally okay, but as you progress, the goal is to get more and more vertical, and then there's different variations like raising your hand over your head, bending sideways, even twisting, that you can do to increase that stretch in that hip.
Move number 2 for a sticky front hip is going to be using a flat band. What you're going to do is take your flat band, wrap it around your foot, and then wrap it around your foot again. Once you got your band attached, you're going to lay onto your side, take your front leg forward. We're stretching the back leg. Back leg comes back, and you press the band straight over the top of your head. You're probably going to want to use a lighter flat band. You'll get a more intense stretch the heavier the band is. Lock your elbows out and get that stretch going. Once you're in position, drop your knee down towards the floor, trying to touch the floor, and then bring your knee back up. And you should feel an intense stretch to the whole front of your leg and your front hip.
Exercise number 1 for the back side of your hip is a forward bend, but there's a few things that I'm going to have you do to make sure that you're really getting the best stretch you can. I'm going to retract and pull my shoulders backwards, puff my chest just a little bit of an exaggeration and an anterior tilt. Now the goal is to get my butt as far behind my heels as I possibly can while keeping a straight spine. Now from here, I already feel the tug in the upper hamstrings, but to focus more on the lower part of the hamstring near the knee, I'm going to make sure my spine stays straight, and I'm going to push my knees backwards until I feel my legs start to shake. We're going to hold this for about 20 to 30 seconds.
The second move for a tight back of your hip, your hamstring, is a band-assisted hamstring stretch. Loop the band around your foot again, lay back, tighten your quad, press your other leg into the floor, kind of grounding it into the floor, pull your shoulder blades back and down, set your low back so it's nice and flat to the floor. Then grab your flat band, pull your elbows to the ground, and the more tension you put in here, the harder the stretch is going to be for that hamstring. And again, we're going to floss into that hamstring, so pressing straight. I almost think of like kicking your foot towards the back wall, so towards your head. As you press up, you're going to feel an intense stretch into that hamstring, and you want to hold for about 2 to 3 seconds, release, and you're going to want to do that about 10 to 15 times or 30 seconds. So thanks for watching, guys, and if you're worried about having tight, sticky hips, you probably do. So remember to test those 2 different areas, and if you find that one is tight, do some of the different moves that Jeremiah and I showed you to fix it.
And the goal here is to get mobility, flexibility, pliability in the hips, not the lower back. The core is for stabilization. This is for mobility.
Let's get those hips unstuck. God, making this video kind of tired me out. Just sit down here.
Oh, Ben! I just saved your life. I wish I got that
this time I'm getting it.
If you don't get this, I'll do that.
You can do like how not to set up a plumb line.
I was going to say how professionals set up a plumb line.
Yes. The only tricky part, it's a little bit of a tight. You could go over the top of them. Oh God, of course you get it the first time. You suck.
Too bad you didn't get hit.